Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to another Sentinel. Huh. I don't know whether to make this a vlog or a review because it could technically be both. I'll figure it out later. Anyway, I'm going to be doing something different. Well, I'm going to be talking about something different. Today, I'll be going over my personal favorite top 5 episodes of Season 1 of Camp Camp. Now, Camp Camp is an animated show done by Rooster Teeth, the company that does Ruby and Red vs. Blue, among other things. Things I don't watch, so I'm sure all of it's good. I'm sure most of it's good, but yeah, this is just talking strictly about what I watch. Now, I've liked Camp Camp for a while now, and I like Camp Camp, and I've wanted to do a video on it for a while now, but I could never figure out what to do. I know I didn't want to do reviews because I found reviewing comedies to be really difficult, because it basically boils down to one of two talking points. One, that's funny, or two, that's not funny. And when it comes to reviewing comedies, I've always found finding ways of elaborating beyond those 2 points to be really difficult. So I figured if I do a video, I won't do something episodic. And that's where we are today. I'm going to break down each season and talk about my favorite episodes from each season. Seasons 1, 2, and 3 were 12 episodes each. Season 2 and 3 had 2 holiday specials, which I don't count, because they aired after the season finale. So anyway, because of that, those 12 episodes, doing a top 10 would only cut out 2 episodes, so instead, I'm going to be doing a top 5, and then Season 4, which is in the middle of airing at the time of recording this, is 18 episodes. So when Season 4 ends, I'll do a top 10. And one more thing, if you're new to my channel, or if you're unfamiliar with Camp Camp, the basic gist is, Camp Campbell is a summer camp where you can do anything. There's a science camp, there's a theater camp, there's an art camp, so on and so forth. It's actually explained in the first episode of Season 1.
I don't want more!
Well, that's why you read the fine print, sport. See? Right there. And more. Now you can't sue us.
So what, it's just some sort of camp?
Well, I wouldn't exactly call it out like that, but yes.
That's sort of the basic premise of Camp Camp, and going beyond that would just eat up a lot of time. So without further ado, let's just jump right into my top 5 favorites. And again, these are just my 5 personal favorite episodes of Season 1. Not what I think are the 5 best, although there might be some overlap. But these are just the 5 episodes I like the most. Feel free to disagree. And starting us off, number 5, episode 9, David Gets Hard. So, this episode is the Nerf episode. After the introductory episodes and the main characters and the status quo were established, we started getting episodes dedicated to more of the background, the secondary cast. And this is the Nerf episode. Basically, spending a week doing the other activities for the other camps. It is the end of the week, and they are on to Nerf's camp, which Nerf has been signed up for boot camp, which David is completely unprepared for. So, and it's kind of... Car started out there, sorry about that. So, this episode is basically dealing into what kind of character is Nerf, and how does David address a character like this? Because the kind of attention Nerf needs, David is not qualified. David cannot handle. And it's kind of funny because Nerf's characterization almost well, not almost, it happened by accident. Basically, in an earlier episode called Rainy Day, in order to make the punchline about Dolph, a character, Rainy Day didn't make the list, and I'm sorry, but I'm ghosting over it really fast. In order to make a punchline last, they needed to establish that Neil, one of the main characters, is Jewish. And they kind of forgot to do that, so they kind of established this idea that Nerf is actually very self-aware. Despite being the bully, he's very in touch with his emotions, with the world around him. He's very psychologically aware, and this episode more explores Nerf's issues, which lead to a lot of great moments, a lot of funny dialogue, and I don't want to give away any of the jokes. So I'm going to be painting in broad strokes a lot here. So yeah, David gets hard. Just see it. Number 4, Journey to Spooky Island. After spending the night telling campfire stories, Max, Neil, and Nikki decide to head off to Spooky Island and try and disprove Max's claim that nothing scares him. So, very standard premise, almost kind of horror movie-ish now that I think about it. This episode introduces the regularly recurring guest character, Jasper. Jasper gets a lot of good moments and a lot of good laughs, and that's all I'm going to talk about Jasper, because and when I do seasons 2 and season 3, I will talk more spoilers, of course, but yeah, needless to say, Jasper is funny, and I will say this, I didn't notice it on my first watch through, even though I should have, but the clues are there. And even though there's this whole going through this episode of, finding these horrifying things, Max still asserts that he is not scared, which leads to an absolutely hysterical punchline. And, well, there's also a really funny reference to Pinky and the Brain. See, what did I say? It boils down to it's funny or it's not funny. And I've been repeating it's funny. So, and expect me to repeat it a lot more. Number 3, Romeo and Juliet 2, Love Resurrected. This could be considered the Preston episode, as this focuses on his latest play, which he has somehow managed to convince the other campers to help him put on. Which kind of raises questions in hindsight now that I think about it, especially because none of the other campers seem to like Preston all that much. It is what it is. And, sitcom continuity, I'm not going to question it. But yeah, so Preston is putting on this play about Romeo and Juliet being resurrected, and of course, everything goes wrong. Me being a really big theater person, this episode speaks to me on so many levels. Preston is amazing. He's one of my favorite characters in the show. There's a lot of great gags, including the hysterical reference to Revenge of the Sith. And we see the return of the Flower Scouts, a Girl Scout parody who were introduced in a previous episode. And it's also the start of establishing their individual personalities, because before this, the Flower Scouts are sort of, that typical Valley Girl, popular girl type clique. And as I said, here we start to see it. We'll see it more in later seasons too, but here we sort of start to see them have their individual personalities. In particular, Tabby, with 2 eyes. And there's also a nice subplot about Max stealing David's phone, which introduces another great guest character, but I won't talk about that here. And yeah, the title itself, you should know the kind of absurdity you're getting into. Romeo and Juliet 2, Love Resurrected. Number 2, the season 1 finale, The Order of the Sparrow. Becoming disheartened, now that I think about it, that's kind of a hard word to say. Becoming disheartened that the campers don't like the camp experience like he does, David tries to revive an old tradition from when he was a Camp Campbell camper. Needless to say, everything goes wrong. This was kind of the turn. This is the turning point for Camp really, because all the humor throughout the season has been disarming you and leading up to this episode, which just shifts and reveals that under all the comedy, there's these dramatic undertones that come boiling to the surface here, and we learn a lot about David, who is my favorite character in the series. Because, and here I'll start talking about the spoilers now. David is an optimist, which, me being an optimist, I just relate to that. Max refuses to believe that David exists. He refuses to believe that anyone with that type of optimistic outlook can exist. So what Max has been doing throughout these seasons is he's been pushing and poking at David, trying to make him reach a breaking point. In fact, there was a really good way he phrased it in an earlier episode.
Yeah, but I didn't want to drive him to murder. I just wanted to show him that his entire philosophical outlook on life is flawed and that the fundamental beliefs and ideologies he holds so dearly are trivial, so he'll start crying himself to sleep like the rest of us. I'm not a monster.
And then, in this episode, we learn the truth. David isn't an optimist because he's naive. David is an optimist because he's been broken by the ways of the world. He's experienced the harshness of reality. And that's why he puts on this optimistic persona, because, he sums it up perfectly. I'll never stop trying. Because someone fucking has to. And it's just a great moment. And again, looking back on it in hindsight, from this episode on, the dynamic between Max and David kind of changes. And finally, number 1. My favorite episode of Season 1. Episode 10, Mindfreakers. Another episode focused on the secondary cast. This is the Harrison episode. Harrison is a magician who may or may not be actually magic. I may talk about that later in the other seasons, as I talk about the other seasons, but yeah. Neil, one of the main characters of the series, is a scientist who firmly believes in reality, the laws of science. He's very much a killjoy. And after performing a seemingly impossible trick, Neil becomes obsessed with figuring out how Harrison pulled it off. And a lot of why this episode is amazing is just Yuri Lowenthal's performance as Neil, as you see him lose his mind over what he saw and trying to figure it out. And especially because a lot of this some points in this episode leading up to the finale, Harrison is obviously trolling him. Like, he takes on Nikki as an apprentice, and then Neil tries to convince Nikki to help him figure out how he performed the trick. And when she comes in, Nikki tells Neil, who again is a scientist, and he's kind of obsessive about his intelligence. She tells him, Harrison said that trick is easy to figure out if you're smart enough, which, is kind of a middle finger to someone like Neil. And again, the jokes across this episode are all great. They hit really hard. My favorite is the joy of painting joke. Yes, Camp makes a Bob Ross joke, and it's just spectacular. And there's not really much more to say. Boy, I think now in hindsight, I picked a bad topic. And there you have it, my top 5 favorite episodes of Season 1 of Camp. Do you watch Camp? What are your favorite episodes? Again, strictly speaking, Season 1. start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell in the corner next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi, where you can support me and the channel and help it grow. And you'll also find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. Sharing the channel, sharing my videos around can also help me. And this is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom. I'll see you guys next time.